Welcome to tutorial number 5 on SQLite. Just a little footnote here. I have the sort removed at this point in time, but what was happening was these are two separate arrays, and so when it would sort it would only sort the site names, not these. Even if you sorted the URLs, the sites and URLs would be misaligned. They wouldn't be together correctly. You'll notice there's an Adlink button here as well. In the root view controller, we created that in our viewDidLoad method. We gave us a right bar button with the add link, and we have our add link code. You've seen this before in the Seven Dwarfs app, and of course we added the add link. We need a viewer, what I would say would be a view controller, which is what this is here, and we declare the two text fields we need. Let's just go back here. They come up, right? Those text fields are going to be the information we add, and they're going to be linked to, at some point, to the data class. Okay. We also, let's just go here for a moment. We have to add the appdelegate here, as well as a link to web data. Now, we haven't used any of them. We fired the pipeline here, as you've seen before, with our shared application delegate line, but nothing else is in here. We haven't finished the code to add it just yet. That one I want to type in. I want to show you how that code looks. But we have to get access to the app delegate, because when we add the item, we have to then update the array in the app delegate to load our table view. Okay, so there's two stages of the game here with doing this. The first is to add the item to SQLite. The second is to update the array. I'm just going to go to OpenOffice here. Here's a little guideline here. In our previous tutorial, we had a table view. We ran the get initial data to display method. It's a class method. We ran it right. Actually, this kind of should be, well, we declared it here and ran it here, and it goes to the data class, which is okay. Run the SQL, get the metadata from the database, extract it, fill the array, and now we have access to that array. We now fill the table view. So the black line is a class method. The red line here is going to be our instance method. When we add or delete data, it's similar to it. We have an add data view class or an add data view controller. We get the information from there. We run or create an instance of this class within here. Run that class instance method. Add the data to the database. Then we add the items to the arrays in the app delegate, and we requery or reload the table view from it, for the changes will be reflected. Deleting it is similar as well. But anyway, okay. Anyway, so let's take a step back to see this web data one here as well. Here is our add link method. It's an instance method. It's not a class method like our get initial data to display method. Why? And why is there no database path needed for that, you ask? Well, you're creating, every time you create an instance of this data class, you initialize it with the primary key, and you attach yourself to the database, so you don't need to do that. But with a class method, you always have to have the database path available. You notice that there's no items here, nothing, just add link. It's a void, it returns nothing. Let's look at the method and get a little hands-on on that. Well, we don't need anything in here. Whoops, I'm sorry. In here, here's the add link method. We don't need any kind of variable. You can do that with some of these methods. Maybe I want to query the database and I have the name of, let's say, the URL I want to find the site, or the name of the site I want to find the URL. Probably that's a better way. So you can do that. You can have an extra variable here. We don't need it. Up here we added a static SQLite statement called the add statement and set it to nil. We had the same statement up for the database, a similar one. We add one for the add statement. Delete, update, same identical thing here, except it's a delete statement or an update statement. Okay? We need that statement. It says, look, if the add statement is nil, then okay, begin the process here. Create a constant character SQL variable, and we're going to use the insert method. We're going to insert into the table. The table is table websites, and we're going to put in parentheses the items we want to insert, as many as we want, or as many as least that are in the table as fields. The fields we have in the table are both website, URL. Now, the values we don't know. If you knew, if you had a static variable you wanted to insert, you could put that value in there. Since they're variables, we put both question marks. We then do the same prepare method that we had up here. If you remember the prepare method, we check to make sure that everything's kosher as far as we don't get an error while we're going to create that add statement, which is what we're saying here. If we do, we have an error while we're creating that statement. Make sure it's prepared properly. Then, what do? Up here, you recall in the select statement, you start from 0, 1, 2. Here, in the insert, you start from 1, 2. So, you use a SQLite bind text, so it's text. If it were an integer, you'd use int. The add statement, comma, the location, which is here, 1. This string web name is the variable. We're going to bind the variable declared here, because we're going to bind it because we're going to need to link to that variable to specify what we're going to add. Now you say, well, how can you do this? You did it up here with a variable. Why can you do it down here, Art? Well, here's the reason why. Because none of these methods are ever called exactly at the same time. And so once the variables are used, they're set back to nil, and nothing should be in there. Once you run the class is done, you're all done. Similar, same line here as far as the way it's written, but in different. You have 2, which is right here, and that's the URL variable. And again, SQLite uses C-based strings. Xcode does not, so you have to declare it as a UTF-8 string. And then, of course, we do a check here to make sure that we were able to add it. If it's done, if it's not done, if we didn't get a step after we added the statement, then we had an error. And if we did, then just reset the whole add statement and start us back to 0. And over here, finalize everything. You have to have the if add statement. SQLite3 finalize the add statement. So if you're dealing with the add statement, then finalize it. In other words, what it says is if I'm running this class and I'm using the add statement, finalize that. Like I did with the database, finalize that. Kind of ran through that quickly, but the basic is this. In the SQL code, insert into it doesn't matter whether it's capitalized or not. It'll take either one. It doesn't matter. Insert into table websites. So you're going to insert into the table the 2 fields and then the values. So simple. It's easier to really code, I think, than some of this stuff. In any event, okay. So that's where we are there. Let's go to our Adlink implementation file. In here we have right and left bar buttons here where we're added. Our title, which is called Adlink. We fired the pipeline here because we need access to it as well. We set the text fields, those outlets, both equal to nothing, blank. And then we have some unusual code here. I'm going to run this for a second. Stop that while it's running. It's running already. To explain what this code is. When we were running with one field, with one, I should say, outlet, it didn't matter whether when we hit the done lights up, we hit the done, it closes, this keyboard resigns. And same thing with save. But we've got 2 here, and it's difficult with 2. Why? I don't want this keyboard to go away if I have a second field. So if I type in here MSN and I click done, notice where where I'm now located, right here. I can go back and do this as many times as I want. Also notice, look at the keyboard here. Keep your eye on it. When I hit done, look at it here. I went from a default keyboard here to a URL here. I'll tell you how that works and how we did that. So what's the code saying? Look, and when you deal with these outlets, you deal with what I found, and what people have found is you can't query this for a null value or say is it null or is it not null. You look at the length. If text link text length does not equal 0, this doesn't equal 0, but this one does, make this one become the first responder, which is what it just did. Now, just to prove my point here, watch this. On the next one, if the URL link is not 0 and the text link text is 0, then make that one become the first responder, and it just did that. Also notice this capitalization for this one. I'll show you how that worked as well. Now if both are there, which is what this line says, both of them do not equal 0, I resign. I've got all the data I need. That's how that works if you ever wanted to know. And over here we still have some code to put in here as well. Why in this method is the same code here? It's simple. I'll just show you here for a moment. In the save key, right, it works fine. How does it work for the done key? This method here is based upon your done key. So in our previous examples we've had one line of code that said text should resign. And what it would do is if I click done, this would go away and I would be left just with this here and this nothing here. I don't want that to happen. So I place the same code in the text field should return method, which is an instance of the UI text field class. And now when I click the done key here, it does the same thing. It ensures the user to make sure both fields have been added. So we do that, and now it dismisses or resigns first responder and dismisses our keyboard. That's what that does. Alright, we're going to quit here. We're going to go to the nib. I want to show you this quickly. Whoops, come on. Alright, that one. There we go. Link name is the placeholder. It's centered. Okay. And capitalizations on words, that's where that comes in, right? Our return word is done. You could put any return word you want in there. We just chose done. That's how you change that word. And we auto enable that return key as well, meaning that until something's typed, it's grayed out. Here, notice the keyboard URL. Alright? For the first one here we had default. For this one we need a URL keyboard. I mean, why would we want to have a default keyboard when we're typing in URLs? We want the user to have everything available to them. And that's why that is. And finally, if you recall, we linked these, we linked them to our outlets, and to our delegate becomes our file owner. In both cases, we have to do that so the information goes from the interface, the user interface here, to the class. Alright, so we go from interface to class. Now class has the information here, right? Okay, so now what? Now, how am I going to add this information? What do I do? Remember, we ran this add method here, okay, to add it to the database. And if we go to the app delegate, you also notice too, we created an instance method here, add new link. It's a web data class instance, and the variable's link object variable. Alright, what does that mean to you? First we have to import that. When we import that the web data H here, this web data class, this declaration class, when we import that, we can then have access to the class. We use the class at class, and when we have access to the class, we can then declare the variable here. What it means is this: I don't have to create a class instance every time. I create it as soon as I run this method. To give you a better idea of what that means, alright, I'm going to come to the method itself. See here, right? When I use this variable, I already automatically have access to anything within the class that's an instance. Adlink, I could have typed in if I wanted, link object. Here it is, dot string, right? I could access any of the variables that are there. I could access. It's an instance of the class. Anything that's accessible through an instance, I can get it, and I want that because the first line here adds the object. It adds it, right? It actually add site and URL to database, right? That's what it does. If we go back to it here, right, this link object add link, which is here, and it may be worded poorly for you. It might have been better to have web object or web add object. And then we run this here, and by running this, we should now add the items to it. Okay. Then we run this one here. Add the site and URL to, whoops, I'm sorry, we have a little typo here, to the arrays. Now remember I said that once we add the object to the database, we now have to add them to the arrays. Okay. There is another possibility, and we'll show you that at the end of this so you see it. But for now, we're going to add that. So, we come back here, okay, our line of code that's in here, I'm going to hit Command Z, and there's some code I commented out, and I'll explain this. Of course, we have to import to get access to this object, this class, we import web data here to have access to it. Why? Why do we need to do that? We need to initialize it with the primary key. We need to say, okay, look, I want the data in that class initialized with the primary key so I have access to that data. Okay. And then I take the two variables here and set them equal to the information that's picked up in my view. So now these variables are now extracted from the view and are now in the class. And then over here I now add the site and URL. And I'm adding it to both, as we saw, adding it to both the database and the array at the same time. Okay, so it seems like a lot, but think about it this way. I have to get the information from the add view into the class, which is what this does here, right? And let me just initialize the data and get it from the view controller, right? Okay. Whoops, sorry. I'm not great with the typing here. Okay, so that's what we do in here. And so this then talks to the nib, says, hey, get it from the nib, right? And store it in the class here. And then this one says, okay, now that it's in the class and it's stored, add it to the database and then update the array here. So we're going from here to here to SQLite to the arrays. So SQLite and the arrays are constantly symmetrical. Whatever I'm doing to SQLite, I am doing to the arrays. All right. So if we were to run this, and let's do that right now, and we were to add a link, and we type in, let's type in what we had before, and we could tab to the next field if we want to, www.msn, and we could just hit our .com here and save it. We now add it. It's now in SQLite, and it's now in our table view. Okay, I'm going to just shut this down, completely shut it down, and I'm going to fire it back up so you can see this. You're going to get blown away here, I think. Notice it's now in my database, and because it's in my database, it will always be loaded into my table view. This is not a static array, it is a dynamic array. Okay, so now here's the other thing here. What do we do about sorting these out? How do we do that? Well, what we have right now, at this point, at this juncture right now, is in the delegate here, we're adding them to the arrays. We don't even have to do that. Remember, we added them to SQLite, the database. We inserted them, I should say. They're already in the SQLite database. They aren't going anywhere. I'm going to comment them out right now. Alright? And save that. I'm going to come to my root view controller right here. Okay. And I'm going to go to my will appear method. Now, you notice there's a line in here that if it weren't in here, we wouldn't have seen. In fact, I'm going to just take a step back before I even do this one. And I'm going to uncomment this just to show you impact. You need to see impact of what's going on. And we'll close this out quickly, but I'm going to comment this out. Watch this. We're going to add another site to this, just for kicks. Right? We're going to call this Yahoo. Right? www.yahoo. Sorry, we don't need to do that. .com is here, right? And save it. Uh-oh, it's not there. Why isn't it there? Because we didn't reload the data. That's what this is for. Every time we see it, we reload it. Remember, we don't have to worry about that on load, because on load we get the initial data to display. I'm going to run this again now to prove my point, that when I load it, I always load up the data fresh, from scratch, and there it is, from SQLite. But because I commented this out, the table view is not refreshed. Alright, so how can I sort this? What can I do? Well, here's an interesting thing. Rather than reload the data, what I could do is this. I have the app delegate, right? I have the site array. You're going to love this. This is what I was talking about early on. Remove all objects. There's a method called remove all objects, right? And I'm going to copy this line for ease. Alright. And I'm going to take that and say, well, why would you do that? Why do that? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the same line here. Well, that's crazy. I mean, what's that going to do? Not going to sort anything, right? Not going to sort a thing. The answer is yes, it won't. In fact, if I run this and I add something to it, I don't know, let's see, chess, www.chess, one of my sites, and notice it removed everything and I didn't load it back in, right? What we want to do actually. What we want to do, okay, is we want to clear both of the arrays and then get the initial data and redisplay it into it each time, okay? And that works this way, you see, because we have to reload the data. What we actually did is we said, look, in our first, before this line came in, clear all of the arrays, get the initial data, but that's all good and well, but we didn't reload the data. All right. In the did load, it will automatically load the data, but in the will appear, you need to reload the data. So now the question really is this. Wait a second, Art. We didn't change a thing. We're still not sorting this array. Or arrays, I should say. How on earth are you going to do that? It's actually quite simple. I'm going to shut this down for a second. Okay. And I'm going to come over to our web data class here. Sorry. It boils down to this. If I'm going to pull this information out, wouldn't it be nice to pull it out and sort it at the same time? There's a word, or a keyword, order by, and field, sorry, WS. This line says, look, sort, or order by in this case, not sort, but order by. It's the same thing as a sort. Sort everything by site. So let's see if it goes that way, and it should. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. All with three words, order by the name. Now, to prove my point here, let's add another one. Let's throw something in the middle. I'm going to use with H. So I'm going to go HSN, or whatever, home shopping, right? Home shopping network, right? It's kind of long, but, and you could also restrict the length of this if you really had desired to. And then www.hsn.com. Oh, hello. Okay. And of course I can just, I don't have to hit, I can hit save. And look at that. Not only did it it cleared the arrays. Let's take a look at what it did. Whoops, sorry. Here. Bring it back up so you can see it. It cleared both arrays. It got the initial data. And then it reloaded it. And now it sorts it all in order. Okay? So go over this, and when I come back for SQLite 6, we're going to finish up and actually link these to the web viewer. And it's really neat. So we didn't have to sort either array. We sort when we pull the information out from SQLite. Okay? Take care.